Yo, Tekken, let's talk about it. So first off, I want to say I hope you've been taking care of yourself. I know there's been like the sickness going around. Everybody's been getting sick, including me. I'm just now starting to get over it. Also Valentine's Day just passed. So, whether you have a significant other or not, right now is the perfect time to be taking care of yourself. Now, when it comes to Tekken, I want to talk about why I think Tekken is the hardest fighting game to get into. So coming from a 2D background, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of a like legacy skill in a sense. And what I mean by that is, you learn one 2D fighting game and those skills can be applied to almost a majority of 2D fighting games, right? A good example would be, Hadouken, 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 spam Hadoukens, condition your opponent to jump. Once they jump, you hit them with a dragon punch. Now, this concept applies to basically every single 2D fighting game. If you can get this down in one, you can get it down at all. Even applies to Smash to a degree. Yeah, another one I would say is like spacing, which, don't get me wrong, some 2D games are a lot more defensive. And then some other ones are, a lot more crash out offensive, kind of like the current state of 2XKO. But spacing kind of remains the same. As far as like 2D fighting games go, obviously it's going to be different. You have different moves that, some games have moves that advance you forward, backward, shifting hitboxes, so on and so forth. But the rule still applies. You kind of learn it in one, and then you can transfer those skills over to another 2D fighting game. Now, when it comes to 2D fighting games as well, the move sets, right? A dragon punch is going to be a dragon punch in pretty much every fighting game. A Hadouken motion is going to be a Hadouken motion, quarter circle, full circle, whatever. A lot of the motions are going to be the same, and they're going to be able to be transferred over to different 2D fighting games. If you learn it in one, you got it in another. Now, an exception to that when it comes to me personally are the fighting game characters in Smash. Like, I'm good at 2D fighters, but when it comes to playing like Ryu, Ken, Terry, for some reason, maybe it's just a GameCube controller, but getting the motions down in a platform fighter like Smash, for some reason, it just does not click to me. These characters don't click with me. I'm good at Smash, I'm good at 2D fighters, but it just doesn't work for me for some reason. But going back to what I said, a lot of those skills are transferable. Something that may be different is maybe like dive kick. That game, it's literally just one move every character. All they do is dive kick. But even then, the rules of spacing still kind of apply. Now, talking about the motion inputs and talking about move sets, they generally don't change from game to game. Like if you play Street Fighter 2, light, medium, heavy punch is pretty much going to be the same for Ryu all the way through the entire series. But that being said, when it comes to Tekken, the move sets are ridiculous. So from Tekken 1 onward, I don't think they ever delete any move. They just keep adding moves, adding moves, adding moves. So now these characters have their move list. They're hundreds, just pages long, right? Hundreds of moves. And, I feel like something, I know a lot of people talk about that, but one thing I feel like people don't talk about in regards to that is the precision that you have to have in order to not have these random moves come out, right? The move set is so long, you have to be extremely precise with what you want to do in order to not have, random moves come out. And I know a lot of people say you don't have to use the entire move set, right? You just have to learn a couple combos. The entire move set isn't usable. Most people aren't using the entire move set. But I feel like if you do want to get to like an upper echelon level of play, you do have to delve into the move set and know, what moves work correctly in what situations. And mind you, I am coming from a casual standpoint, right? I know a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, you could say is a skill issue. And I'm the same way when it comes to like 2D fighters or Smash. I hear a lot of complaints and it definitely sounds like a skill issue to me. But when it comes to Tekken, I am a casual. When it comes to 3D fighters, I am a casual. And I'm speaking from the standpoint of a casual player. The movesets are just ridiculous. I think they should definitely cut it down some. They're also more reliant on knowing like frame data, which this also sounds like a huge skill issue. I know. But in 2D fighters and in the platform fighters, I feel like when it comes to the frame data, it's a little bit more, I guess you just have more intuition for it. I do study frame data myself in the games that I do play. And I know when it comes to Tekken, it's just a matter of studying that as well. But also because of what I was saying before, how the skills you learn in one are transferable to another, Obviously, the frame data isn't going to be the same, but you sort of get a feel for how many frames a certain move is when you're used to playing a certain type of game. And those skills aren't necessarily transferable over to Tekken, you know? Another hard thing I find about Tekken is, Tekken grabs, right? In most fighting games, 2D fighting games, to take a grab, you just grab back. Basically, it's just one input. Versus Tekken, there's 3 different inputs to tech 3 different grabs, right? You have to notice if the right arm is a little bit farther than the left arm, if the left arm is a little bit farther than the right arm, or if they're both going the same. And I don't know if, I'm getting up there in age. I don't know if it's just old man reflexes, old man Dwella in the building, or if it's hard for everybody, but it's so hard for me to visually see and then be able to react to having 3 different ways of being grabbed and 3 different ways to tech said grabs and get out of it, right? Don't even get me started on King grabbing you once and just putting you in an infinite genjutsu. That's a whole other story that I'm sure casual Tekken players all have nightmares about, right? It's our sleep paralysis demon. But yeah, Tekken grabs is ridiculously hard to me for some reason. So another reason I'd say it's kind of hard to get into Tekken, although they do have a lot of cool third-party characters, like Akuma being added, for instance, Noctis from Final Fantasy, Negan from Walking Dead. I feel like other than like Bishop and maybe Reina, I see a lot of people talking about Reina, but I don't know if it's because they love Reina or hate Reina. But other than those 2 characters, I feel like a lot of their first party characters have been pretty lackluster from like Tekken 5 onward. I'm a little bit older, so I remember Tekken 3. That's my most fondest memory of playing a Tekken game. But I know for a lot of people, it's Tekken 5. And I feel like since then, a lot of their first party characters just haven't been too memorable in comparison to the third party characters. The third party characters are great. And kind of going back to what I said about the fighting game characters in Smash, playing Akuma in Tekken, you would think because I'm a 2D fighting game player that I'd be able to play Akuma in Tekken, but again, for some reason, the skills just never transferred over to Tekken for me for some reason. But yeah, and even then, just when I talked about spacing, being able to space within a 3D environment, it changes the game a lot. You have to learn how to dash in, out, back, forward. 3D to 2D, it's a very jarring change. And that's another reason I think Tekken is so hard to get into. A lot of the people that have been playing Tekken have been playing Tekken since, the beginning. It seems like it's one of those games where you have to have a long history in it to be good. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Definitely let me know down below if there's any players that have just picked up the game and they're already smacking around top players. And I would love to know who that is, and I would love to, check out their footage and see how they got to where they got to. So now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Barry.
Hey guys, Barry Bigger here. Thank you for having me, Dwella. Now, I started my 2D fighting journey back with Smash Bros, but I started getting more into it with Smash 4 and Ultimate. From there, I would go on to play Street Fighter 6, and I loved that game as well. So of course I knew of Tekken, but I never gave it a try before. So when I saw Tekken 7 was free on PlayStation Plus, I had to give it a go. Keep in mind this was my very first Tekken game. I couldn't get Tekken 8 because it was quite pricey at the time, so I thought Tekken 7 was a good way to start. And boy, Tekken 7 was quite the experience, and let me get into that. So of course, with me being new to Tekken, the only character I really knew in this game was Kazuya because, again, I grew up playing Smash and that's what I recognized that character from. So I thought, I played a little bit of Kazuya in Smash, let me give him a go in this game, And let me just tell you, sports fans, mashing one button will not do the 10-hit combo in this game. Which goes with my first main problem with this game, and that's the fact that there's so many combos in this game and it could be a bit overwhelming for me. Because if I try to learn one combo and I try performing it in a match, I end up doing the wrong one and I perform a different combo, which is cool, but like it wasn't the one I was going for. I'm used to this man having 40 moves in Smash, but now he has 100 in Tekken, which is like, I don't know which ones to learn, which ones are important to use. And then I remembered Street Fighter 6 had modern controls, which was pretty much a basic control scheme for fighting games, which made learning combos a lot more easier. But in this game, they don't have that option. You have to just learn the combos, and it's quite difficult for me to do that. I will say I do love the fact that they do carry on old Tekken combos from the past ones to the present. And I like that because that means players that used to play it and are getting back into it, they still remember the old combos, they can still remember the character. Though for me, since I'm a new character, there's so much more for me to learn. Like how to counter certain characters, how to deal with getting out of grapples, and just overall how to punish them. After a while, I ended up dropping the game and I just thought it just wasn't for me personally. Now, I'm not trying to say the game was terrible or it sucks. I just personally think that it's a difficult game to get into as a new casual player. And of course I have to go through the learning process and understanding every character. And I think, you know, if you have the time for that, you definitely can go for it. But just for me, it just wasn't it. But that was my personal experience with Tekken. And maybe I might give it another try down the road, but until then, I think I'm good for now. But I'm gonna send it back to Dwella.
All right, there it is. Go ahead and comment down below and let me know if it's been hard for you to get in Tekken, if you've even tried. Let me know if you agree with me, disagree with me. I'd appreciate it if you liked the video, left a comment. And more importantly, like I said at the beginning of the video, keep taking care of yourself, like yourself, you know, and never forget, you matter. All right, I don't want to make this one too long. Dwella in the building. I'm out the building. Peace.